The rain in Seattle doesn't always fall straight down. Sometimes it comes at you sideways, carried on winds that roll off the Puget Sound like the breath of something ancient and angry. Meteorologists call it an atmospheric river, a poetic name for what feels like the sky opening its veins and bleeding cold water across the city. That night, standing outside the iron gates of my family's estate, I learned what it meant to drown on dry land. My hoodie was soaked through in the first 3 minutes. By minute 10, I couldn't feel my fingers. By minute 15, my jaw was shaking so hard that my teeth clicked together like a gambler's dice, random, violent, beyond my control. The security lights cast long yellow streaks through the rain, turning every droplet into a tiny falling star. Beautiful if you weren't the one freezing beneath them. Through the living room window, warm light glowed like a promise. I could see my mother, Patricia, moving inside. She was pouring tea. My sister, Tiffany, was curled on the sofa, wrapped in something soft, her face illuminated by the gentle flicker of the fireplace. They looked like a painting, a Norman Rockwell scene of domestic comfort. I looked like a ghost pressed against the glass, waiting for someone to notice I was dead. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, drop a comment below and tell me about it. Your story matters, and I read every single one. Hit subscribe because what my father discovers next changed everything I thought I knew about my sister, my mother, and myself. I should tell you something about my family before we go further. We're not villains and victims in the simple way stories like to pretend. My mother wasn't born cruel. My sister wasn't born a liar, and I wasn't born a saint. Patricia grew up poor in rural Oregon, the kind of poor where you learn early that softness gets you hurt. She married my father when she was 22, and suddenly she had everything she'd ever dreamed of: the house, the money, the security. But fear doesn't disappear just because your bank account grows. It just finds new things to attach itself to. For my mother, that fear became obsession. She needed control. She needed to know that nothing could ever be taken away from her again. Tiffany was her masterpiece, the perfect daughter, blonde and beautiful, with a smile that could convince you water wasn't wet. My mother poured everything into her: the lessons, the clothes, the confidence she herself had never been given. Tiffany was proof that Patricia had made it, that she belonged in this world of wealth and polish. And then there was me, Sierra, the accident, the second daughter who came when no one was planning for another child. I looked like my father: dark hair, serious eyes, a face that didn't photograph well but remembered everything. I was good at school, quiet at parties, invisible in the way that only middle children understand. My mother didn't hate me. That's what people get wrong about families like ours. She just didn't know what to do with me. I didn't fit the narrative she was building. So slowly, over years, I became something else in her mind. Not her daughter, but a problem to be managed, a variable that threatened the equation. Tiffany learned early that our mother's love was conditional. She learned to perform. She learned that keeping Patricia happy meant keeping Sierra down. I don't think she was evil. I think she was 17 and terrified of losing the only love she understood. None of that made standing in the freezing rain any easier. 20 minutes earlier, I had been setting the table for dinner. The house smelled incredible. Roasted garlic, rosemary, the kind of warmth that seeps into your bones. My father was working late, but he'd promised to be home by 8. I was looking forward to it. Family dinners had become rare since he started traveling more for work. The scream came from upstairs. Tiffany's voice, high and hysterical, shattered the peaceful quiet. I heard her footsteps thundering down the stairs before I saw her, face red, tears streaming, phone clutched in her hand like evidence at a trial. $12,000! She sobbed, stumbling into the living room. It's gone! Someone stole it! My mother was at her side in an instant, arms wrapped around Tiffany's shaking shoulders, voice murmuring comfort. "Breathe, sweetheart, breathe. Tell me what happened." "My inheritance from Grandma! The money for my summer program! It's been transferred out of my account. All of it." I stood frozen by the dining table, a fork still in my hand. Something cold began to spread through my chest. Not fear exactly, but recognition. I knew what was coming before Tiffany even looked at me. "It was her," Tiffany whispered, pointing a trembling finger in my direction. "Sierra, she must have used my Face ID while I was napping. She's the only one who could have done it." The fork clattered against the plate. "What? Tiffany, I didn't—" "Don't." My mother's voice cut through the room like a blade. She had straightened up, and the concerned mother had vanished. In her place was something harder, older, the girl from rural Oregon who had learned that attack was the only defense. "You think you don't see what you are?" my mother hissed. "You think I don't know how jealous you've always been of your sister? She has everything you want, the looks, the friends, the future, and you couldn't stand it. You couldn't just let her have something good." "Mom, please." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into skin hard enough to leave crescents that would bruise by morning. She dragged me toward the front door with a strength that came from somewhere deeper than muscle, from years of buried rage finally finding its target. "You want to act like an animal? You can live like one." The door opened, the cold hit me like a wall, and then I was outside, stumbling on the wet porch steps, hearing the lock click behind me with the sound like a judge's gavel. The gate was closed, the intercom was silent, and the rain kept falling, indifferent to everything. I want to tell you that I handled it with dignity, that I stood in the rain like a heroine from a novel, stoic and strong, waiting for rescue with quiet grace. The truth is messier. For the first 5 minutes, I cried, not the pretty kind of crying you see in movies, but the ugly, gasping kind where your whole body shakes and snot runs down your face and mixes with the rain until you can't tell what's tears and what's sky. I pressed the intercom button 4 times. I called out for my mother. I even apologized, actually said the words, "I'm sorry," for something I hadn't done, because that's what years of being the problem child teaches you. You learn to apologize first and figure out the truth later. Nobody answered. The 6th time I reached for the intercom, I stopped. My finger hovered over the button, shaking from cold and something else. Through the rain-streaked window, I could see Tiffany. She had shifted on the sofa, angling toward the window. She was watching me. She was smiling. It wasn't a triumphant smile. It wasn't a villain's grin. It was smaller than that, private, satisfied, the smile of someone watching a plan come together. And in that moment, something inside me went quiet. I lowered my hand. I stepped back from the gate, and I stopped crying. There's a concept in psychology called learned helplessness. It's what happens when you're hurt so many times that you stop trying to escape. You accept the pain as inevitable. You become compliant because compliance is the only power you have left. But there's another concept, one that doesn't get talked about as much. It's called learned resistance. It's what happens when something finally breaks, not your spirit, but the chain that was holding you down. When you realize that the rules you've been following were designed by someone who never wanted you to win. Standing in the freezing rain, watching my sister watch me suffer, I felt the chain snap. I pulled out my phone. The battery showed 12%. The screen was wet, barely responsive. I had to tap 3 times before the call connected. "Sierra?" My father's voice was confused, concerned. I could hear traffic in the background. He was still driving home. "What's wrong? You sound strange." "Dad?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I need you to come home right now. Don't ask questions, just come. I'm 15 minutes away. What's happening?" Mom locked me outside, in the storm. The gates closed and I can't get in. Silence. Not the silence of disbelief, but the silence of something clicking into place. My father wasn't stupid. He'd been watching the dynamics of this family for years, even if he hadn't always intervened. I think part of him had been waiting for the moment when he couldn't look away anymore. "Stay on the phone with me," he said. "Don't hang up. My battery's dying. Then stay where I can see you when I pull up. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming." The line went dead. 11%. I pressed my back against the cold iron bars of the gate and waited. The rain hadn't slowed. If anything, it was coming harder now, driven by winds that howled through the trees like warning bells. My body had moved past shivering into something more dangerous, a deep, bone-level cold that made thinking difficult. Hypothermia starts slowly, then accelerates. I knew this from biology class. I knew I was probably already in the early stages. I focused on my breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth, counting seconds, staying conscious. And then I saw the headlights. My father's SUV didn't slow as it approached the gate. The headlights cut through the rain like searchlights, blinding me for a moment. I raised a hand to shield my eyes, expecting him to stop, to punch in the gate code, to go through the proper channels the way he always did. He didn't stop. The SUV jumped the curb with a violence that sent muddy water spraying in all directions. I stumbled backward as the vehicle tore across my mother's pristine lawn, the lawn she'd spent thousands of dollars maintaining, the lawn that was supposed to impress the neighbors and prove we belonged in this neighborhood. The hydrangea bushes, Patricia's prize-winning hydrangeas, featured in the local garden magazine just last spring, exploded under the wheels like they were nothing. Blue and purple petals scattered across the grass, instantly beaten down by the rain. The SUV carved a path of destruction around the locked gate, engine roaring, and didn't stop until its bumper was inches from the front porch steps. The driver's door flew open before the engine died. My father is not a physically imposing man. He's average height, average build, the kind of person who blends into crowds at the grocery store. But something in his face as he stepped out of that car made him look larger than I'd ever seen him. His jaw was set, his eyes were focused. He moved with purpose that didn't leave room for argument. He reached me in 4 strides. His coat came off his shoulders and wrapped around mine in a single motion. Warm, heavy, smelling of coffee and the leather seats of his car. For a moment, just a moment, I let myself lean into him. Let myself be a daughter instead of a survivor. "You're freezing," he said, not a question. "I'm okay." "No, you're not." He looked at the house, at the lights still glowing warmly in the windows, at the locked door that might as well have been a fortress wall. "Stay behind me." "Dad, what are you—" He was already walking, up the porch steps, boots heavy on the wet wood. He didn't reach for his keys. He didn't knock. He planted his foot and kicked the door just below the handle with enough force that the frame splintered and the door swung inward, crashing against the interior wall. I followed him inside. The warmth hit me like a physical force. After 20 minutes in the freezing rain, the heated air of the foyer felt almost painful, needles of sensation rushing back into my numb skin. I swayed, catching myself on the doorframe, suddenly dizzy. The living room looked exactly as I'd left it. The table half set for dinner, the fireplace crackling, the expensive tea set my mother only used for special occasions sitting on the coffee table, steam still rising from the cups. Patricia was standing in the middle of the room, porcelain cup frozen halfway to her lips. Her expression wasn't shock, it wasn't guilt. It was annoyance, the look of someone whose evening has been rudely interrupted. "Robert," her voice was ice. "Have you completely lost your mind? You destroyed my flower beds. You kicked in the door. Do you have any idea how much that mahogany cost?" My father walked past her like she wasn't there. He walked straight to the sofa, where Tiffany sat huddled under her cashmere blanket, iPad clutched to her chest, eyes wide with something that might have been fear or might have been calculation. "Give me the iPad," he said. Tiffany clutched the iPad tighter, her knuckles going white against the rose gold case. The confident smile she'd worn at the window was gone now, replaced by something more desperate, a cornered animal calculating escape routes. "It's private," she said, her voice pitched higher than usual. "You can't just take my things." I pay for that iPad. I pay for the cellular service. I pay for the cloud storage." My father's voice was calm, but there was something beneath the calm that made Tiffany flinch. "Hand it over, or I cancel all of it right now, and we do this with the bank statements instead." She looked to our mother, the same look she'd been giving for 17 years. The look that said, "Fix this, protect me, make him stop." Patricia stepped forward, inserting herself between them like a shield. "Robert, you're being ridiculous. We already know what happened. Sierra took the money. Tiffany is the victim here. Why are you traumatizing her further?" "Because something doesn't add up." My father finally looked at her, and I saw my mother take an involuntary step back. Our daughter was locked outside in a hypothermic storm. I had to drive through the yard and kick in the door to get to her. And you're standing here drinking tea like it's a normal Tuesday evening? She needed to learn. She needed to learn? His voice cracked on the word. "Patricia, she could have died. Do you understand that? Another 30 minutes and we'd be talking about permanent damage, frostbite, organ failure. And you were in here, warm and comfortable, teaching her a lesson?" For the first time, something flickered across my mother's face. Not guilt exactly, but uncertainty. The narrative she'd built was so solid in her mind that she hadn't stopped to think about the physical reality, about a teenage girl in a thin hoodie, about the temperature dropping, about the very real medical consequences of her punishment. "I was going to let her back in," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. "I just wanted her to understand how serious this was." "Then you won't mind if we verified the facts first." He reached past her, and this time when he took the iPad from Tiffany's hands, she didn't resist. She had gone pale, her lower lip trembling. I watched her and felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but pity. She looked so young suddenly, so scared. My father carried the iPad to the large television mounted above the fireplace. We used it for movie nights sometimes, back when we still had movie nights. He had set up the screen mirroring years ago so we could share photos from family vacations. Now he used that same feature to cast Tiffany's screen onto 80 inches of crystal clear display. "Robert, this is a violation of her privacy." My mother tried again, but even she knew she'd lost the moral high ground. You can't argue about privacy violations when you've just locked your child out in a storm. The iPad's home screen appeared on the television. Pastel pink wallpaper, neatly organized apps, a notification banner showing 17 unread messages. My father tapped the Venmo icon. And there it was, not hidden, not encrypted, just sitting at the top of the transaction history like a confession waiting to be read. Sent to Lux Life Resale, $12,500. Memo, investment piece. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the rain outside seemed to pause, as if the whole world was holding its breath. "That doesn't prove anything," Tiffany said quickly. "Sierra could have done that. She could have taken my iPad while I was sleeping and—" My father swiped to the email app. The most recent message, time-stamped 3 hours ago, glowed on the screen. From Chanel Official. Subject, your order has shipped. Tracking number 1Z999AA10123456784. He opened it. The delivery address wasn't our house. It was a location 2 streets over, the home of Tiffany's best friend, Madison. The order was for a classic flap bag in lambskin leather. Price, $8,900. "There are more orders," my father said quietly. He wasn't looking at Tiffany anymore. He was scrolling through the purchase confirmations with the methodical focus of a forensic investigator. Shoes, a bracelet, 3 more bags from different designers. The total is, he paused, calculating, over $15,000, more than was in your account. "I used a credit card for the rest," Tiffany whispered. The words seemed to escape against her will. "My credit card?" my father asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. My mother had gone very still. She was staring at the screen, at the evidence that couldn't be explained away, and I watched her world restructure itself in real time. For 15 years, she had built her identity around one simple story. Tiffany was the golden child, Sierra was the problem, and everything that went wrong could be traced back to my failures. That story was crumbling now, and she had nothing to replace it with. "There's more," my father said. He had opened the Messages app. The group chat at the top was titled, "Girls Only, Hearts," and the last message had been sent just minutes before he arrived. He tapped it. The conversation filled the screen. Dozens of messages, spanning hours, all of them focused on a single topic. Me. "She's still outside, lol. Your mom is savage. Did you get the bag yet? This is literally the best plan ever. Send a pic." And then Tiffany's response, time-stamped while I was freezing at the gate. "OMG, you guys, it actually worked. The loser is literally outside the gate right now. Mom is totally buying it. I'm a genius. Bye-bye, Sierra." Attached was a photo. Blurry, taken through the rain-streaked window, but unmistakably me. Soaked, shaking, alone. I stared at myself on the screen, this pathetic figure hunched against the iron bars, and felt something break inside me. Not my heart, that had broken years ago and healed crooked. What broke now was the last thin thread of denial, the part of me that had always whispered, "Maybe you're imagining it. Maybe they don't mean to hurt you. Maybe it's not that bad." It was that bad. It had always been that bad. And now there was proof. "Tiffany," my father's voice was barely above a whisper. "Look at me." She looked. Tears were streaming down her face now, real tears, messy tears, the kind she never let anyone see. Her perfect mask had shattered, and what remained was just a scared teenage girl who had gone too far and was only now realizing it. "Do you understand what you did?" "I just wanted—" She choked on the words, trying to find an explanation that would make this okay. "Everyone has nice things. Everyone goes on trips. I just wanted to fit in. And Mom always says we have to be careful with money, but then Sierra gets all these scholarships and everyone talks about how smart she is. And I'm just the pretty one. That's all anyone thinks I am." She was crying harder now, her whole body shaking. "I'm not smart like her. I'm not going to get into a good college. I'm not going to have some amazing career. I'm just going to be nothing. And I needed something that was mine, something that made me special." I waited for the anger to come, for the righteous fury that should have flooded me after hearing her justify what she'd done. But instead, I felt tired. So tired. Because I understood what she was saying, even though I hated her for it. We had grown up in the same house, under the same mother, both of us fighting for scraps of love that were never enough. The difference was just the weapons we'd been given. I had my brain, she had her beauty, and we'd both been taught that there wasn't room for both of us to succeed. My father turned to my mother. "Did you know?" "Of course not." Patricia's voice was mechanical, hollow. "I never would have. If I had known—" "You didn't want to know. That's different." But he wasn't finished. There was something else in his eyes, a flicker of terrible knowledge that told me the worst revelation was still coming. "There's one more thing." He navigated back to the mail app, but this time he opened the trash folder, deleted messages, the digital graveyard where secrets go to die. One email stood out, sent yesterday. The subject line made my heart stop. "STEM Summer Initiative. Congratulations." I couldn't breathe. The email glowed on the screen, 80 inches of confirmation that my dream had come true and been stolen from me before I ever knew. The STEM Summer Initiative was the most competitive program in the state. 300 applicants for 20 spots, a full scholarship covering tuition, housing, and materials, access to university laboratories, mentorship from working scientists, a network that could open doors I'd never even known existed. I had applied 6 months ago, poured my heart into the personal essay, stayed up until 3 in the morning perfecting the project proposal. And then I'd heard nothing.
Weeks of silence that I'd interpreted as rejection. I'd told myself it was fine, that there would be other opportunities, that I wasn't as special as I'd hoped. But I had been accepted. I had been chosen. My father opened the email. The acceptance letter was dated yesterday, sent at 3:47 p.m. It congratulated me on my outstanding application. It requested confirmation within 48 hours to secure my spot. Then he opened the next deleted item, a sent message from my email account, timestamped at 4:15 p.m. yesterday, while I was at soccer practice, while my phone was in my locker and my iPad was charging at home. Dear Selection Committee, thank you for the opportunity, but I regret that I must decline my acceptance to the STEM Summer Initiative. After careful consideration, I have decided to pursue other interests. Please offer my spot to another qualified candidate. Sincerely, Sierra Mitchell. The room tilted. I grabbed the back of the sofa to keep from falling. No, I whispered. No, no, no. My father turned to Tiffany. All the softness had drained from his face. This wasn't about money anymore. This wasn't about sibling rivalry or teenage drama. This was something deeper, a calculated destruction of my future. Why? His voice cracked on the single syllable.
Tiffany was shaking her head, tears and snot running down her face, all pretense of beauty forgotten. I just thought if she went to that program, she'd be gone all summer. Everyone would talk about her. Mom would be so proud of her. And I'd just be here, alone, being nothing. So you sabotaged her. You found her acceptance letter, declined it from her account, and deleted the evidence so she'd never know what you took from her. I was going to tell her eventually. You needed what, Tiffany? I stepped forward, my voice steadier than I felt. You needed me to fail so you could feel better about yourself? You needed to destroy my opportunity because you couldn't stand me having something you didn't? She flinched like I'd hit her. I'm sorry, Sierra, I'm so sorry. I'll fix it. I'll call them and explain. The deadline was midnight tonight. My father's voice was flat. By the time anyone hears an explanation, her spot will be gone. The weight of that settled over me. Months of work, a chance that might never come again. Gone because my sister was afraid of being ordinary. I should have screamed. I should have lunged at her, torn at her perfect hair, made her feel even a fraction of the pain she'd caused me. But I was so tired, so empty. There was nothing left inside me but a cold, clear certainty. I'm done. My father looked at me. Done? With this, with her, with Mom. I pulled his coat tighter around my shoulders. I can't do this anymore. I can't live in a house where I have to check if my own acceptance letters have been deleted, where I get locked in the rain because my sister told a lie, where my mother slaps me before asking a single question. Patricia finally spoke. Sierra, sweetheart, we can work through this. Families have problems. We'll go to therapy. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't call me sweetheart. You haven't called me that since I was 6 years old. You don't get to start now because you're scared of what this looks like. She recoiled. For the first time in my memory, my mother had no comeback, no manipulation, no way to spin this into a lesson or an opportunity for growth. The truth was too big, too documented, too impossible to reshape. My father crossed to my side. Sierra's right. This family has been broken for a long time, and I've been too busy, too absent, too willing to believe everything was fine. That ends now. He looked at Patricia, not with hatred. I'm not sure he was capable of hating her, but with a sadness that went bone deep. I'm taking Sierra to my mother's house tonight. Tomorrow, I'm calling a lawyer. We'll figure out custody, finances, all of it. but I won't leave my daughter in a home where she isn't safe. She's safe here. I would never actually hurt her. You locked her outside in hypothermic conditions, Patricia. You slapped her without evidence. You chose Tiffany's word over hers without a moment of hesitation. He shook his head. That's not safety. That's not even close. The next hour was a blur of motion. My father helped me pack a bag, clothes, laptop, the few things that mattered. Tiffany stayed on the sofa, crying quietly, too broken to fight. My mother followed us from room to room, alternating between anger and bargaining, threats and promises. None of it changed anything. At the front door, the door my father had kicked in, the frame still splintered. He paused. The rain had finally slowed, settling into a gentle drizzle that caught the light like scattered diamonds. I'll send someone tomorrow to fix the door and clean up the yard, he said. We'll do this properly, legally, but Sierra is coming with me tonight, and that's not negotiable. Patricia stood in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Without her rage, without her certainty, she was just a middle-aged woman whose carefully constructed world had collapsed. I did what I thought was best, she said quietly. I was trying to teach her responsibility. No, my father's voice was gentle but firm. You were trying to control her. There's a difference. We walked out into the cool night air. The SUV was still parked on the ruined lawn, muddy tracks leading around the gate. Evidence of a father who had chosen his daughter when it mattered most. 3 weeks later, I sat in my grandmother's kitchen, laptop open in front of me. An email had arrived that morning. The STEM initiative had received my father's explanation, the supporting documentation, the evidence of what had really happened. Under the circumstances, they had reconsidered. A spot had opened up. If I still wanted it, it was mine. I read the acceptance letter 3 times before I believed it was real. Not everything was fixed. My parents were separated now, heading toward divorce. Tiffany was in therapy, required by my father as a condition of continued financial support. My mother and I hadn't spoken since that night, and I didn't know if we ever would. But for the first time in my life, I was free to build something that was mine, not stolen, not sabotaged, just mine. I hit reply. I typed yes. If you've made it this far, you're not just a viewer, you're part of this story. Every single comment teaches the algorithm to share it with someone else who needs to hear it. Someone who's still standing at the gate, waiting for headlights. Someone who doesn't know yet that escape is possible. So drop your thoughts below. Tell me about a time you chose yourself when everyone else wanted you to stay small. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I'm sharing more stories like this. Real talk about family, survival, and finding your own path forward. Share this with someone who's finding their own storm. You never know whose life you might change. And remember, sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you become the ones you need protection from. It's not your fault, and it's not forever. See you in the next one. Stay strong.